This is a News 12 Long Island Vote 2011 election debate.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Island Vote 2011 election special. I'm Jill Wagner. For the next half hour, we'll be talking with the two candidates running for the 11th Legislative District of Nassau County. The 11th District includes Port Washington, Sands Point, Plandome Manor, Flower Hill, Roslyn Harbor, Roslyn Heights, and parts of Garden City Park, Albertson, and Herricks. Now let's meet the candidates. The challenger, Eric Zausner of Port Washington, is running on the Republican and conservative lines, and the incumbent, Wayne Wink of Roslyn, is running on the Democratic, Independents, and Working Families tickets. Gentlemen, welcome to News 12 Long Island.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we begin, here are the rules and format of this debate. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. Each will have a minute and a half to answer each question, and then 30 seconds for rebuttal when needed. At the end of the debate, both candidates will have 1 minute for closing statements. We start now with opening statements. Speaking order was decided by lot prior to the show, and we begin with Wayne Wink, Jr.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you, News 12, for the opportunity to present this today. For the past 4.5 years, I've had the honor of serving you, the residents of the 11th Legislative District, right here in Nassau County. During that time, I've worked tirelessly to make our county government more efficient and more effective. Unfortunately, in the last couple years, I believe Nassau County has been headed in the wrong direction under Republican rule. Whether it was their attempts to give raises to the presiding officer and to other legislative leaders at the beginning of the last term, their wasteful spending on a redistricting power grab that proved to be illegal, or the ill-conceived referendum that was intended to raise our taxes under the guise of a $400 million borrowing to rebuild a Coliseum and a ball field. I just believe that Nassau County has been using the wrong priorities, quite frankly. And I look forward to spending the next half hour having an opportunity to discuss these and so many other issues. Thank you.
Thank you. And Eric Zausner, your opening statement.
I'd like to thank News 12 for having us and allowing us this forum. I'm a lifelong resident of Port Washington. I've served as an executive managing a multi-million-dollar business where I've had to make the tough choices between cutting costs and increasing profits. Currently, I work for Nassau County at the Office of Emergency Management in the Grants Management Division. And most recently, I was literally out in the storm during Hurricane Irene, serving the people of Nassau. I am honored and privileged to be running for the legislature given the economic challenges that we live in and the tough votes that most certainly lay ahead. I will stand with the legislative majority to hold the line on taxes and help clean up the mess that the Democratic majority that served Tom Suozzi for 8 years created, of which my opponent was a member for the last 2. Thank you.
All right, now let's start with some questions. Now, the county executive has said that the county is in a fiscal crisis. He wants the legislature to let him reopen some negotiated union contracts to get concessions that he says will save the county money. One thing he wants to do is have county workers pay 25% towards their health care benefits, bringing it more in line with the private sector. So I'll begin with you, Legislator Wink. What do you think of that idea?
Well, unfortunately, as a lawyer, to me, over 200 years of American history has dictated to me that when you enter into a contract, you expect to live up to that contract. When one party, in this case the administration of Nassau County, suddenly decides that the rules have changed and they want to get out of the contract that they negotiated, that the current county executive ratified as a member of the county legislature, I think that flies in the face of everything we know as a society that says that when you enter into a contract, you intend to abide by it. So that I have a problem with. And, you know, the fact of the matter is, I believe that the administration has demonized our labor unions and so many others, MTA and others that we'll talk about later. But by demonizing these unions, quite frankly, first of all, you destroy morale and you make the services that are provided in this county all the more difficult. Additionally, I think it's easy to forget recent history that, quite frankly, these unions have given us concessions time and again. They have come to the table on many occasions and provided give-backs, provided savings for the residents of Nassau County. And I believe that with a plan I believe the unions would do so again. So my feeling, quite frankly, is that rather than negotiate in the papers and rather than negotiate by demonizing our opposition, I believe the administration needs to step forward with the assistance of NIFA, by the way, which has been discussed of late, and I think that will get the savings that we're looking for.
Okay, great. Same question for you, Mr. Zassner.
Well, I think that we need to look at the economic realities that we live in. We have the highest unemployment in Nassau County that we've had in many generations. Homes are being foreclosed upon, and most people haven't seen a raise in many years if they work in the private sector. I think that's something that we need to take into account. Government cannot be insulated from the economic realities of the times we live in. I do work for Nassau County, but let me tell you, as an appointed person, I do pay a portion of my health insurance. I cannot fathom why some employees wouldn't want to do the same and chip in. They see the mess that we're in. And to discuss the contracts, you know, most of these contracts were given away by the last county executive, and they were approved by the Democratic majority in the legislature at the time so that Mr. Swazi could get reelected. The bottom line is we as a county going forward need to just put the past behind us and say, look, this is where we are now. We need everybody, labor, management, to come to the table and say, look, yes, we're going to need a little concessions from you, but I think at the same time they need to be fair, and I think that we also do need to keep morale so that we can keep our essential government services functioning.
Great, thank you. 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, the fact of the matter is they were negotiated by County Executive Swazi in most cases, and they were ratified not just by the Democrats in the legislature, but by all 19 legislators. In fact, it was unanimously ratified, most of these agreements, and then legislator Mangano was a part of that. You know, at the end of the day, the unions have been asked time and again to go back and look for more savings, and I think if they knew that there was actually a plan in place, they would be more than willing to do so, whether it's through health insurance contributions or other means of savings. I have no doubt they would do so again.
Okay, and 30 seconds for rebuttal for you.
I think what the county executive, by and large, is asking of the unions is not unreasonable. To ask somebody who pays absolutely nothing for their health insurance costs, when between their pension and benefit and health insurance, it costs the county 53% of their salary every year. It's just unsustainable. We cannot afford it. And we need to really recognize the realities of the times we live and develop a plan in conjunction with NIFA and labor to come up with an equitable solution.
Okay, staying on the issue of the budget, the county executive is trying to close the deficit. He says about $300 million for next year. He's trying to close the deficit without raising property taxes. Now, part of this plan includes laying off potentially hundreds of county workers. So, in your opinion, do you think property taxes do need to be raised in order to prevent these massive layoffs? And I'll begin with you, Mr. Zausner.
First of all, I cannot fathom raising taxes on the highest taxed county in the nation. What we can do, though, I have a plan to generate $100 million of revenue annually for the county by selling the naming rights to our parks. Now, the way that would work is that fact that we would be able to say, look, we now have Eisenhower Park, we can now have Pepsi or another company sponsor it, and that is money that costs us nothing to the taxpayers that will help bring dollars into the county. I think we're looking, it's not just black or white. I think that we really need to realize that we need to generate revenue, we need to utilize our assets to keep our services, and I think that it's not just about layoffs or property tax increases. I think what we need to do is we need to think outside the box, look at those new kinds of creative ways to raise revenue, and selling the naming rights to our parks is just one way that we can do it, and that can generate real money every year. To give you a little quick numbers, Citigroup pays $20 million a year for the new Shea Stadium. Prudential Center is about $75 million for their contract, and MetLife Stadium, the new Meadowlands, it's something we can do. We can sell Caniac Parks naming rights, Eisenhower Parks, Christopher Morley. And yes, I think if we looked at the charter, we can revise it so we can sell the naming rights to the Coliseum. We're one of the last counties that doesn't have our stadium named after a corporation.
Thank you. Same question for you, Legislator Wink. Do you think it's inevitable that property taxes will have to be raised to close the deficit?
Well, look, no one wants to raise property taxes. The fact of the matter is that, we all own homes. We all have to meet expenses. It's getting very, very difficult to do so in this economy. So that should be a last resort no matter what happens. But the fact of the matter is that, fanciful revenue sources are not going to solve the problem here. $100 million a year is not going to come from naming rights. We, in fact, have pursued that in the past, and they simply do not cover anywhere near the amounts of money that we would need. We need to do more, quite frankly, of prioritizing the essential services in Nassau County, not sell them off like the sewers, like Long Island Bus, where we're looking to privatize to a place that has no guarantees of service or fares being the same. These are all the things that we have as problems right now, and quite frankly, we need to go further, and we need to look at right-sizing government. I've spent the last 4 years doing everything I can to try to right-size government. Now, what do I mean by that? What I have always meant by that is figuring out which level of government does the job the best, whatever that function may be. Give that over to that level of government, whether it's the county or the towns or school districts or you name it, and get everyone else out of the way. The duplication of services costs us so much money in this county, and we need to be doing more of that and not trying to just patch up holes in our budget here and there. We need fundamental change like that.
Okay, and 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Naming rights can absolutely work, but Mr. Wink, I think you're running away a little bit from your voting record because you were the deciding vote for the energy tax and the Swazi 4-year plan, which raised taxes on Nassau residents. We cannot sustain more tax increases. It's impossible. When foreclosures are up, when unemployment is up, we need to find ways of bringing money in creative ways, not going back to the taxpayers. I could never support that.
Legislator Wing.
Well, let's be clear about the energy tax. In point of fact, in early 2009, when no one had any idea of how bad the recession was going to be, but we had every indication that it was going to be a long and very, very serious recession, we had a $135 million problem that needed to be plugged. The way we did that in early 2009, 15% of it came from new revenues in the form of an energy tax. The rest of it came from cuts, concessions by labor, increased federal aid, and things of that nature. So 15% of the problem was solved by taxes. Everything else, in fact, was covered other ways.
Okay, it is time for a break now. When we come back, we'll continue with the debate for Nassau's 11th legislative district right here on News 12 Long Island as local news guests. Welcome back to this Island Vote 2011 election special as we continue with the debate for Nassau's 11th legislative district. The candidates, once again, are Republican challenger Eric Zausner and Democratic incumbent Wayne Wink. Now let's get back to some questions. So Nassau residents just went to the polls and they rejected a plan to spend $400 million of taxpayer money to build a new Nassau Coliseum. The Islanders' lease, however, is up in 2015. So what do you think should happen to that property? It's 77 acres in the heart of Uniondale, and I'll begin with you, Legislator Wink.
Well, unfortunately, I think the county executive really hamstrung himself, quite frankly, by going to the voters and asking for $400 million worth of bonding, which would have been a tax increase without question upon the taxpayers in Nassau County. We went from the prospect of the Lighthouse Project of billions of dollars worth of private investment for mixed use and sustainable development to going to the taxpayers asking for $400 million. There was no in-between on that, and for the life of me, I don't understand that. In fact, in recent weeks since the referendum, where I was a leading advocate against the referendum, quite frankly, it wasted $2 million of our taxpayer money by doing it in August as opposed to doing it in November when we had an election coming anyway, and it wouldn't have cost anything more. But the fact of the matter is, by voting down this referendum, the taxpayers of Nassau County not only expressed their interest in not paying for it, but they also gave the business community an opportunity. And in recent weeks, we've seen that potential development has actually come to the fore now, and we have an opportunity, I think, to go back and deal with private developers, to get a state-of-the-art public coliseum with no taxpayer cost. And that's what the original Lighthouse project was proposing, and that's what we need to continue to pursue. I think we can quibble about what should and should not be at that location, but I certainly think that bar none, we all want to keep the Islanders, and we all want a coliseum that will be state-of-the-art.
Okay, and same question for you. What should happen to that 77 acres?
Well, I agree that we need to find a public-private partnership so we can keep the Islanders here. The Islanders are a very important, integral part of our Nassau County lexicon, so to speak. What we should really be doing, though, and I think that the timing of the referendum was certainly ill-timed. I think it should have happened on primary day when we've already had the money budgeted for it. But the voters have spoke very loud and clear. And I think that it's obvious that they do not want Nassau government paying for this. So I think that's why I appreciate what the county executive is doing now, putting it out for request for proposals. And I really think that we can find a public-private partnership. Is don't forget, that 77 acres is owned by us, the taxpayers, and it's not something that we should be giving away the way that Tom Suozzi wanted to do, during the Lighthouse proposal, because the bottom line is, where else do you find 77 acres that we actually own and we can do something with? There's no other place in Nassau County anymore, and we should certainly not give it away. So what we really need to do is find that public-private partnership, because I would be completely unwilling to, one, raise taxes, of course, but number two, there's no way that we should be giving that property away the way that the Democratic majority and Tom Suozzi wanted to do several years ago.
Legislator Wink, 30 seconds.
I'm fascinated by this giveaway that we supposedly were involved with. The fact of the matter is we were going to get $2 to $3 billion worth of private investment with mixed use, retail, commercial, housing, a state-of-the-art coliseum with practice facilities and training facilities and whatnot throughout the coliseum, both for the Islanders and for the public at large. It was going to be a massive destination for all of Long Island, quite frankly, and probably the entire tri-state region. It was not a giveaway. We were getting a state-of-the-art coliseum at no taxpayer expense, and we were getting the opportunity, I think, for sustainable development, which would provide us anywhere from $50 to $75 million a year in property taxes.
All right.
30 seconds to respond.
I just think that there were a few problems with the Lighthouse. One of them is we live in suburbia. We don't live in a downtown urban, area. The Lighthouse was, it's a good idea on paper, but being around the Meadowbrook Parkway, Hempstead Turnpike, it's just far too big for the scope of the project. And there was going to be, at the end of their lease, where they were, Charles Wong was going to be able to purchase the property, and it would no longer be owned by the taxpayers.
Okay, Legislator Wink, I'll give you 30 more seconds.
Purchase the property and put back on the tax rolls is one possibility. The fact of the matter is, though, we were still getting something for nothing. We were getting a brand new coliseum for no taxpayer cost. And we were getting a sustainable form of revenue in that property taxes would be increased by $50 to $75 million simply by the development of that property. It was a far, far better idea than asking the taxpayers to tax themselves for $400 million worth of debt.
On to one more question. We have a minute each, actually, for the response. How would you grade the county executive so far in his time in office?
I think the county exec deserves a solid B. He is really trying absolute hard. He walked into a nightmarish situation that would have been no different than if Tom Suozzi would have been here for a third term. And I think that he really is trying to utilize every bit that he can of his talents as a negotiator and the assets of the county to try to pull this county out of insolvency. And what we need to do is I think we need to support him and say, look, maybe not everything is perfect, but the bottom line is he wants to make this government more affordable for you guys, the taxpayers, for me, for Legislator Wink, and that way, you know what? We all win because our taxes will not go up. He wants to make it more affordable for us to live here in Long Island. There are certain things absolutely that he hasn't, that he could have done differently, like moving the referendum vote to the primary ballot, where the money's already budgeted for. But he really is trying hard, and the bottom line is he's dealing with union contracts that were negotiated during a previous administration that kicked the can down the road, that now is coming to fruition, that we now have to deal with because of all those years of deferred payments. So it was kind of a shell game. So now we have to actually basically find a way to find our way out.
And Legislator Wink, you've disagreed with the county executive on many, many occasions.
Yes, I have.
Is there anything you agree with him on that you think he's done a good job
Well,
on?
look, getting back to your first question, as an old professor at Hofstra University, I believe that when somebody has not given me all the material they need to in order for me to give them the proper grade, I give them an incomplete. And I would say at this point, I agree with Eric that the fact of the matter is Mr. Mangano came in at a very, very precarious time, both internationally, nationally, and locally in the economy. There's no question about that. And we've all had to deal with those realities. But going forward, we've seen failures of leadership on this referendum for the Coliseum. We've seen a failure of leadership in his inability or unwillingness to negotiate properly with the unions to get the concessions that we need. We have seen, really, I think, many areas where he has just not performed and not given us what we need as a county to sustain itself. So in that regard, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and give him an incomplete and hope that he can actually complete the work at hand.
Okay, thank you both. Time's up now for questions. We will start with closing statements, and we'll begin with Wayne Wink Jr.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. For the past half hour, we've discussed a few of the major issues facing Nassau County in the months and years to come. Like so many of you, I know what it's like to struggle to pay the mortgage, to pay your taxes, and to have to choose the household necessities over the luxuries that we all want to be able to have in our homes. These are and continue to be very difficult times for all of us, and county government should be no different. There are many difficult decisions that need to be made. It's that sense of priority that I have that led me to oppose the referendum to borrow $400 million for the Coliseum and a ball field when Nassau County couldn't afford to pay its bills, its employees, and the agencies that provide so many important services to our frail elderly, our youth, and so many others. My promise to you is that I will continue to question the priorities of the administration. I will continue to press for a reorganization of our priorities in order to guarantee the most cost-effective and efficient provision of services while at the same time remembering those most in need here in our county. Thank you.
Mr. Zausner, your closing statement?
I want to thank News 12 again for allowing us this great forum. You've heard two very different visions of what Nassau County should become. I'd like to remind the voters that part of the reason why we're in the position we're in is the failed policies of the Swazi-Wink administration. Was my opponent who cast the deciding vote to pass the home energy tax and voted for the Swazi 4-year plan, which raised taxes 4% annually. As your legislator, I would never raise your taxes, and I will implement my plan to sell the naming rights to our biggest parks, which will generate $100 million annually. I will continue the county executive's mission of right-sizing Nassau and continue to trim unneeded employees from the payroll to make our government efficient the way that every private sector business has. If you like the policies of my opponent and think that we in the highest tax county in America should be paying higher taxes, your choice on Election Day has never been clearer. But if you want to hold the line on taxes, trim the fat from government.
I'm going to have to cut you there because we are out of time.
Right.
Thank you both for participating. Our time is up. Thank you for joining us. Just a reminder, Election Day is November 8th, so make sure to get out and make your vote count. And if you're looking for more information about your local races, log on to news12.com. Click on the Island Vote 2011 banner. You can also follow us on our Island Vote 2011 Facebook page and on Twitter at News 12 Long Island, #IslandVote. You can also watch all of our Island Vote 2011 debates and coverage on Channel 612 on your IO Digital cable box. Just click on the Island Vote 2011 banner. I'm Jill Wagner. Thanks for watching this election special on News 12 Long Island, as local news guest.